So I recently rewatched the 1995 film Waterworld and I wanted to give some of my thoughts. This was my favorite movie when I was in second grade, and as you can see by my channel, my entire online identity is a reference to the main villain in this movie, the Deacon. I didn't know until years later that the movie was actually critically panned on release and was one of the biggest box office flops of all time. I've rewatched it many times since then, and I never really understood why people didn't like it. However, it's been a few years, so I felt like I should check it out again. But before we get to my more detailed thoughts, if you're enjoying this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to get notified about any new videos. And thanks for watching so far. So to recap the movie, the premise is that the polar ice caps have melted and covered the Earth with water. We follow our protagonist, the Mariner, who sails around on an awesome three-hulled boat, trading with other drifters, and running away from the bad guys in the movie, the Smokers. He goes into an atoll, a massive floating trading post and community, in order to trade dirt for water. The inhabitants discover that he has gills behind his ears as well as webbed feet.
Gills.
He is subsequently imprisoned and sentenced to be executed by being slowly lowered into a disgusting goop pit. Before the sentence can be carried out, the atoll is attacked by smokers. In the ensuing chaos, the Mariner is freed by two atoll inhabitants, the young Enola and her guardian Helen.
If I let you out of here, you're taking us with you.
Sure.
And they escape on the Mariner's boat before the atoll is massacred. The Mariner, to put it lightly, is not nice to his new passengers. He beats Helen with an oar, tosses Enola overboard to drown,
Hey, what are you doing?
chops off both of their hair, and even pimps out Helen to another drifter. In the extended version, it's also revealed that he plans on selling them into slavery.
You're gonna sell us back there.
With time, however, the Mariner softens a bit towards them, even going as far as teaching Enola how to swim. Unbeknownst to the Mariner, the Smokers, led by the Deacon, are looking for Enola, as she has a tattoo on her back that allegedly leads to dry land. This leads to several skirmishes with the Smokers, eventually resulting in Enola being captured and the Mariner's boat burned. Our protagonists are eventually rescued by atoll survivors, and the Mariner, now having grown fond of Enola, decides to go rescue her. In the climactic action scene, the Mariner incinerates the oil supply on the Smokers' large ship, the D's, and successfully rescues Enola, while all of the remaining men, women, and children on the ship are genocided. One of the atoll survivors then decodes the tattoo on Enola's back,
Then dry land is that way.
and they make their way to eventually find dry land. However, the Mariner is unable to adjust to life on dry land and decides to sail out once again into the sea, leaving his newfound friends behind. So now that we've recapped the story, let's dive a bit into why critics didn't like this movie. A lot of it had to do with how much it cost. The production was fraught with issues, causing its budget to balloon to $185 million, making it by far the most expensive movie at the time. With a movie so expensive, you'd generally expect it to be some kind of sprawling epic akin to something like maybe Gone with the Wind or Ben-Hur. However, the movie fundamentally strives basically to just be Mad Max on water, ergo a fun action movie in a post-apocalyptic setting. As such, I think a lot of critics just had sky-high expectations for the movie that weren't met. We can look to the famous film critic Roger Ebert for his thoughts. The cost controversy aside, Waterworld is a decent futuristic action picture with some great sets, some intriguing ideas, and a few images that will stay with me. It could have been more, it could have been better, and it could have made me care about the characters. It's one of those marginal pictures you're not unhappy to have seen, but can't quite recommend. If you want an example of what critics probably hoped for, I think the 1997 film Titanic fits the bill. It came out 2 years after Waterworld and had a similar budget, but tonally and thematically, it's much more similar to the sprawling epics of the past. On a more specific level, critics also complained about the acting, characters, plot holes, and incomplete world building. I do want to engage with these criticisms one by one, but before I do so, I want to mention that there are actually two versions of this movie, a 135-minute theatrical cut and a 171-minute extended cut. I actually rewatched both, and when it comes to the theatrical version, I do think the critics have a bit of a point. While this is the version I grew up with, I will admit that it's a bit rushed, particularly in the third act, and there are a few plot holes that can really take you out of the movie. The extended cut, on the other hand, is far superior, as it provides a lot more world building and character development, fills in some of the plot holes, and adds some extra padding that makes it far closer to the sprawling epics mentioned previously. So the first criticism I'll engage with is the acting, and I honestly think the acting is fine. The Mariner is played by Kevin Costner, who isn't the greatest actor by any means, but I think he does a good job playing a curmudgeonly, misanthropic drifter who slowly gains some semblance of humanity throughout the film. Helen is played by Jean Triplehorn, who does a good enough job as Helen, although there are definitely scenes where the dubbing is not good.
I'll catch something myself.
Tina Majorino, I think, does a good job as Enola. The character can come off as annoying, but she's 10, and it's just the way she's written, and not really reflective of the acting. Dennis Hopper is definitely the strongest actor of the bunch, and he plays the Deacon in a very over-the-top way that I think works well in the film.
First one that tells me lives.
But it was smoking, but I think...
You won. Start over.
The rest of the supporting cast is also fine. Nothing incredible, but nothing that took me out of the movie. The next criticism I want to engage with is about the characters, specifically the idea that the Mariner is unlikable, and I mean, yeah, he's honestly an objectively bad person in a lot of ways, but it's clear in the movie that he is shaped negatively by his experiences with people. Due to his mutation, he's considered an outcast and has been treated quite poorly in his life, which has led him to become deeply misanthropic. And we see his hatred of humanity be pretty justified by the actions of the atoll inhabitants, who try to murder him simply due to possessing a mutation. Now granted, his callousness, cruelty, and violence towards Helen and Enola are obviously unacceptable. However, this is clearly the point of the movie, that as justified as the Mariner's misanthropy might be, he still kinda sucks. But then as the movie progresses, we do see shreds of humanity show through his rough exterior. For example, after throwing Enola into the ocean in a fit of rage, he does realize he went a bit too far and turns around to save her. He also changes his mind about pimping Helen out to the Drifter in exchange for some paper, going as far as killing the Drifter to protect her. These are obviously low bars, but in a world this cruel, I do think it's notable. The scene that really breaks through the Mariner's rough exterior is shown in the extended version, where Helen tells him a story about how she first met Enola. As a baby, Enola drifted to the atoll in a basket full of dirt. Due to space limitations, the atoll inhabitants wanted to send the basket back out to sea, where Enola was certain to die. Helen intervened and made a deal with the atoll leaders that she would not have children of her own so that she could be Enola's guardian. However, due to these circumstances, Enola was still considered an outcast by the atoll throughout her life. This story softens the Mariner quite a bit towards Enola, since he can empathize with her struggles as an outcast, particularly by the same people who tried to kill him earlier in the movie. He also softens towards Helen, who serves as a foil to him throughout the movie as she is guided by hope, optimism, and kindness. He comes to understand that she is a genuinely kind and selfless person who will go out of her way to protect outcasts like Enola, and she is also strong enough to continue to hope in a world this bleak. His respect for her is truly showcased in one of the final scenes in the extended version, where he promises to tell anybody as kind-hearted as her about Dryland.
If I find any others out there like you, I'll tell them about this place. How one woman with hope and courage found it.
The Mariner obviously doesn't become completely likable by the end of the movie, but he does develop in a sensible, realistic way that I find quite compelling. Granted, he does end up murdering all the men, women, and children on the smoker's ship, and it's a bit odd that the movie completely glosses over that, but whatever. The next thing I want to talk about are the plot holes. The theatrical version definitely has some, particularly in the third act where the Mariner somehow obtains a jet ski and finds his way to the smoker hideout. But most of these plot holes are fixed in the extended version. For example, in the one I mentioned, there's an extended scene where two smokers on jet skis arrive at the location of the atoll survivors to threaten them. The Mariner then kills them, takes one of their jet skis, and sets fire to their fuel trail to trace their path back to their ship. Likewise, the world building is substantially improved in the extended version. Some of my favorite examples include the details about how the atoll works, like how they turn away other drifters, or how they strictly manage the population count. Similarly, I also love the details about how the smokers function, with their ammunition and oil refineries and their cigarette stash. As a side note, the movie is pretty unsubtle about contrasting the strict conservationism of the atoll with the excessive wastefulness of the smokers, and the extended version has even more scenes to contrast them, like this dialogue scene between the Deacon and Enola about restricting growth.
To make less people.
Pardon?
So with those criticisms out of the way, I want to cap things off with things I love about both the theatrical and extended cuts. First off are the set pieces. The atoll in particular is a phenomenal set, which was actually built to scale to be about the size of a football field. I really like the aesthetic of how it puts together so many pieces of junk to construct something so large and effective. I also love the Mariner's trimaran. I mean, it does this. Amazing. Another thing I love about this movie are the action scenes. I personally think the smokers' attack on the atoll is one of the best action sequences ever made. Most of the scene was done with practical effects and real stunt work, and maybe this is just nostalgia talking, but I do think it looks quite a bit different from the CGI action scenes of today. It's really well made, creative, and quite big in scope. And finally, I'm also a big fan of the score by James Newton Howard, which I think is a classic. It fits well within the film, particularly the action scenes. So overall, even after many rewatches, and even after seriously engaging with the critiques of the film, I still love it, and I would definitely recommend it, particularly the extended version if you can get your hands on it. Anyways, thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.